Hi, I'm Judy Heiman from the Legislative Analyst Office, and this is Steve Boilard. And we recently issued a report titled Guaranteed Regional Access Needed for State Universities. This is the latest in our series on the Master Plan at 50, which is available here on our website. This particular report was prepared with the help of Annabelle Paez and Mark Whitaker. California's Master Plan for Higher Education assigned separate missions to each of the public higher education segments and defined the eligibility pools for each. UC was charged with serving a relatively small number of highly qualified high school graduates from around the state, while the community colleges were assigned to serve their local communities as local access institutions, open access institutions. The state universities were charged with serving the top 1/3 of high school graduates. And although they were not specifically assigned a regional role, in practice, they've largely assumed that middle ground of responding to regional education needs, and campuses have guaranteed access to qualified applicants from their local areas. State budget cuts over the last few years have required the CSU campuses to manage their enrollment and keep it in line with their resources. Some of the ways campuses have done that have weakened the local guarantee, leaving some students without access to their local campus, even though they meet the master plan qualifications and would previously have been guaranteed access to that campus. At San Diego State University, for example, local students had to compete with other students from across the state and had to meet a higher standard than the master plan defined. In this report, we describe this chain of events and look at some of the policy implications of these changes. We conclude that CSU's regional role is an important part of the overall higher education system for the state, and we recommend that the legislature take steps to protect that role. Specifically, we recommend formalizing a regional role for CSU in statute, codifying expectations for CSU eligibility, and directing the CSU to adjust its enrollment policies accordingly. These steps would help to ensure that California's system of higher education continues to meet the state's needs through a differentiated, tripartite system of institutions, which is one of the hallmarks of the master plan's success. Steve, we've had a number of questions about some of our report's key findings and recommendations. I guess one of the main ones considers timing. If the master plan never formally required the CSU to serve a regional role, why are we calling for that now?
And it's really because it hadn't become an issue until more recently. For decades, there was adequate capacity at the campuses, most campuses, to accept all eligible applicants. And it's really just more recently with a surge in enrollment demand, as well as the resource constraints brought on by the state's budget crisis. This forced campuses to have to choose between local and out-of-area applicants.
Of course, we've heard from some campus officials that they should be able to select the best qualified applicants whether or not they're local.
Yes, and that makes sense, except that there's a number of students who are place-bound. They have family obligations, they have work obligations, they own a home, and they're unable to readily move to another part of the state to attend a university. And so for them, we think it's important that there be a local option, an ability to attend a local campus.
Some campus leaders argue that if they're forced to admit students who just meet the minimum qualifications, that will bring down their graduation rates and other measures of success.
And we understand that argument, and it makes sense from a campus's perspective that if you bring in better qualified students, your students will perform better and you'll have better graduation rates. Our concern is it doesn't do anything for on a statewide basis. It simply collects the better students at some campuses, it redirects the less prepared students to other campuses, and so there's no net benefit for the state.
There's also been some confusion about how CSU can guarantee access to somewhere in the system while turning students away from individual campuses.
And that's really the crux of this whole issue about access. There's a number of ways that campuses try to reconcile this open-ended eligibility guarantee to students with a finite number of slots at a given campus. And so ways that they've done that is by adjusting the the application deadline, either earlier or later, depending on if you want more or fewer students. There are prerequisites that can be put in place for a transfer student coming onto campus. There are requirements you can have in place for a student applying on going through matriculation or counseling. So these are ways that campuses kind of fine-tune or adjust the number of applicants that are able to be admitted. But there's a different category that's been used more historically by the University of California, and that is to simply redirect students from a campus to a different campus, to say the guarantee is a system-wide eligibility guarantee, but we can redirect you elsewhere. And some students who get redirected, understandably wouldn't be interested in that other campus, and that's a way to manage enrollment. Cal State, we feel, isn't as amenable to that kind, or doesn't work as well with that kind of enrollment management technique, because we're really looking for them to serve a more regional guarantee. You can't redirect them without doing harm to that. And so they've come up with a policy that kind of tries to walk that line called impaction.
And impaction can get pretty complicated.
We tried to explain it in a report. We have heard a lot of questions about how it really works. The easiest way to think about it is really there's two kinds of impaction. There's campus impaction, where a given campus with more enrollment demand than it can absorb can erect higher eligibility criteria, higher GPA or SAT requirements, but apply that just to out-of-area students. So a local student with minimum system eligibility still can get in, but an out-of-area student would encounter these higher standards, and therefore fewer of them could come on campus. So that preserves the local guarantee. The other kind of impaction is program impaction. So a given program like engineering or sociology could enact these higher standards, higher GPA or SAT requirements or other requirements on all students. There is no local guarantee for program impaction.
So as more programs on a campus become impacted, then that local guarantee becomes less valuable. Exactly.
As a matter of fact, there have been a number of changes in recent years where campuses have more and more programs impacted. At this point, there's actually 4 campuses where all programs are impacted. So a student can get onto campus but has no guarantee of access to a particular program with only minimum eligibility.
One final question. Several people have asked whether these difficult choices between admitting local students and non-local students could be avoided if the state could fund more enrollment.
And yes, in theory, it could. If we had enough resources to provide additional capacity at every campus, these tough choices would not be required. It's a pretty unrealistic expectation at this point, both because the state budget constraints are so severe, and there's a number of other areas of the state government that are looking for additional resources as well. We feel that a better, or at least an alternate way to try and mitigate some of this problem is by better resource allocation within the system. Even today, with some campuses really constrained and having to turn away applicants, there are some campuses that seek additional applicants that are having trouble meeting their enrollment targets. There are some programs that are undersubscribed that have a very low student-faculty ratio where classes are small. So if you could redirect resources where they're more needed and away from places where they're underutilized, you can make better use of existing capacity. Another way to make better use of existing capacity is, say, during the summer, where there's a number of facilities which are underutilized on many campuses. So, the answer, we think, is not just restricting who gets into a particular campus, but better aligning the resources with where the need is.
Thank you, Steve. We hope this presentation has been helpful. The entire report is available on our website, and we'd be happy to answer your questions by telephone or email.